Imagine a steel door sealed in the heart of Rome. Behind it, light barely reaches the edges of ancient shelves where papal letters, darkened manuscripts, and puzzling symbols lie as if holding their breath. People say if every cabinet were opened, the histories of religion and power might have to be told from the beginning. Now, we won't chase sensationalism. We'll go straight to what matters. Why the Vatican keeps secrets, what is actually verified, what is only rumor, and what pattern of power operates behind those stone walls. By the end, you'll have a calmer way to look at it all between faith, truth, and humanity's need for control. The Vatican holds a vast archive: diplomatic letters, decrees, canon law files, petitions, and records of religious trials, paper layers like the growth rings of Europe. The former name, Secret Archive, doesn't necessarily imply criminal secrecy. It originally meant the Pope's private collection. But the thicker the privacy, the larger the myth. The less outsiders see, the more the imagination fills in the rest. We need a clean distinction. Some materials are published, some are opened with restrictions, and some are not yet open for reasons of security, diplomacy, or simply lack of staff to process them. Historians have long reminded us of an uncomfortable truth. Every archive is the result of selection, what is kept and what is left out, and that selection helps shape the story of power. Occasional leaks reveal a reality. No wall is perfectly airtight. When internal documents slip out, the aura of untouchable cracks. Part of the public shifts from reverence to doubt. What matters is our stance. Instead of jumping to conspiracy, ask the basic question: what is the motive for secrecy? To protect diplomacy, to prevent misinterpretation, or to shield something that might harm credibility? The answer, I believe, is usually a composite. So, what's the point of this section? The Vatican archives are both a storehouse of knowledge and a tool for governing trust. When the door opens a little, trust is fed by transparency. When the door closes, trust is fed by symbol. And symbol, without dialogue, will soon be tested by skepticism. Among the most persistent rumors, the most alluring is the tale of forbidden manuscripts, grimoires, formulas, invocations seized during heresy trials or the Counter-Reformation. The picture is often painted in heavy strokes: book burnings, pits of ash, chants smothered. But history is always messier. Many medieval monasteries also copied learning: herbalism, astronomy, protochemistry. A text can disappear because of worms, war, dampness, lack of funds, or because its own community judged it useless. Not every loss is the result of a plot. One name often invoked is the Grand Grimoire, a black book linked to Solomon. The real lesson here isn't whether it's authentic, but the psychology beneath the claim. The moment someone whispers, "The Vatican is hiding this," the object is wrapped in a fresh aura. Vague information, amplified by the brand of secrecy, turns into a magnet, even when scholars remain cautious about dates and provenance. And the boundary between heresy and experiment is often blurry. An herbal remedy in a season of religious tension can be mislabeled. A diagram of metallurgy written by the wrong person in the wrong circle can be treated as heterodox. If you've ever shivered at the thought, maybe a piece of scientific knowledge was buried, I understand that feeling. But between fear and conclusion, insert a step. Ask for evidence that can be checked. A closed door is not proof. It is a governance choice. There's a story that is both sweet and dangerous. A secret order protecting a holy bloodline. It has fueled an entire cultural industry, from novels to blockbusters. Quite a few proofs, once paraded in public, later showed the fingerprints of forgery. The Church has repeatedly denied the idea. Why does the myth still thrive? Because it strikes at a very human desire to humanize the divine, to bring the sacred down to the everyday. The notion of a hidden genealogy suddenly gives faith blood. It offers a sense of belonging. Whoever touches that clue feels they've tapped a deep artery of history. And it is psychologically convenient. Every gap in the evidence can be patched with the word secret. Remember a simple rule. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If a genealogy and genetic traces truly exist, they must stand up to modern testing, to a rigorous chain of custody, and to scholarly criticism. Until then, the story remains a cultural narrative, symbolically powerful, but not entitled to the chair marked historical fact. A small, real-life vignette helps keep us grounded. In one village, people passed around a tale about a stele carved with the words, "Holy Lineage." The storytellers were sincere, the emotion real. But when researchers arrived, the stele turned out to be a recent reconstruction based on oral memory. The problem wasn't malice. It was that a community's memory sometimes prefers a beautiful story over a correct one. And a beautiful story can make us skip the hard questions. Set myth aside and follow the money. No age-old institution stands outside economics. The Vatican has a bank, assets, investments. Here, the shadows are less romantic but more immediate. Transparency. Over the decades, financial scandals have rattled Italy and Europe. When a major bank collapsed, a web of guarantees, shell companies, and questionable transfers came to light. Clergy in charge of finances became focal points. Later, reform efforts were announced. Increased audits, ethical guidelines for portfolios, reviews of trusts. Those are positive signals, but signals alone don't erase suspicion overnight. Money is harder to see than paper. A manuscript can sit in a cabinet. A stream of funds can pass through 5 companies and 3 countries in seconds. Even when legal, the ethical question lingers. Where should a religious institution invest? What should it avoid? How should it report? And who is accountable when things go wrong? I'd argue that the health of a faith shows most clearly in how it converses with hard questions. Not with a short press release, but with process, and with a willingness to accept independent scrutiny. By now, you may ask, if finance is the most practical realm, is it the master key to the whole story? I don't think it's the only key, but it is an honest mirror, a place where reputation is tested by numbers, signatures, and consequences, and every credible reform leaves a trail that can be checked. Among all the rumors, the Chronovisor, the machine that sees the past, is the most theatrical. There is no rigorous evidence, no technical documentation, no specimen of a device. Why does it live on? Because it braids 3 strands: religious power, the allure of science fiction, and a private personal hunger to witness with our own eyes the decisive moments of history. The real discussion isn't does the machine exist, but what the story reveals. When the door is closed, rumor fills the space. If an institution doesn't tell a story proactively, others will tell it instead. And those tellers are rarely bound to verification standards. They are bound to the need to impress. Thus, the Chronovisor functions as a mirror. It reflects us more than it reflects the Vatican. It shows that we crave proof so much, we'll flirt with a magical device. It reminds us that the desire to shortcut our way to truth is natural and dangerous. Now, step back and look at the whole picture. First, secrecy as authority. Secrecy creates a sense of sanctity and hierarchy. When you cannot touch something, you learn to bow before it. But secrecy has a breaking point. A small leak can crack a large wall. Authority built purely on secrecy is more fragile than it thinks. Second, myth as glue. Every community carries binding stories. For the Vatican, myths, from forbidden manuscripts to hidden bloodlines, both feed the imagination and help believers feel they stand within a long, deep narrative. But when myth is used to replace evidence, it becomes paint, not foundation. Third, transparency as short-term risk and long-term capital. Opening doors always stings a little, wrongs are exposed, accountability is demanded, change is required. Keeping doors closed for the long term, though, hurts more. Suspicion accumulates, boycotts inch forward, faith thins out. Transparency isn't a campaign, it's a rhythm. Scheduled reports, consistent standards, and predictable audits. Fourth, the desire to know as a persistent engine. Humans struggle with informational vacuums. Without data, we fill gaps with narrative. That filling can be beautiful or toxic. The responsibility of any narrator, religious or secular, is to keep the gap from stretching so long that toxins breed. Let me share one ordinary, telling slice of life. A small European museum once opened an auxiliary vault to the local community and invited residents to bring family papers for cross-checking. 3 months later, they had not only more material, but also more volunteers. The reason sounded simple. For the first time, I felt they trusted us. Transparency turned out not to be a mere technique. It was an act of giving power back to the public. If you've walked with me this far, you've likely sensed it. The issue isn't whether the Vatican is guilty or innocent, but whether we have a method to stand steady in a sea of rumor. That method has 5 short steps. 1. Stay skeptical, but respectful. Don't bow blindly before symbols, and don't smash them impulsively. Ask, where is the evidence? 2. Classify the information. What is publicly verified? What is hearsay? What still needs corroboration? 3. Follow motives. Secrecy that protects diplomacy differs from secrecy that hides wrongdoing. You can tell by the signs, established procedures, reporting cadence, accountable people. 4. Prioritize touchable facts. Finance, procedures, access permits, year-by-year openings. These are places where trails remain. 5. Understand the power and limits of myth. Myth can sustain faith, but it cannot replace truth. Keep it where it belongs, the symbolic tier, not the evidentiary foundation. In the end, I believe the greatest power of any institution, religious or secular, doesn't sit behind steel doors. It lives in people's trust, and trust lasts only in the light. If this journey felt worthwhile, stay with me for the next chapters. We'll keep asking hard questions, seeking slow answers, and moving forward with both respect and clarity.